Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about the four pillars of life. That's health, wealth, love, and happiness. So pretty much everything in our life revolves around these four pillars. Okay, so first let's talk about health. This is often the most neglected one because we make time for everything else in our life except for exercising, except for eating healthy, except for paying attention to our mental health. A lot of people that I meet, for whatever reason, just don't like to drink water. It's like they're a little kid who never grew up and they only want juice or soda or beer. For me personally, I drink water with every meal of the day, so I always have my right amount of water intake per day. I feel like that's the easiest way to get your water in is to have a glass of water with every meal that you have. Oh, but I don't know how to cook. Just look it up on YouTube. It's honestly not that hard. There's so many great recipes. And if you think that, oh, but it's more expensive to cook than to eat out, it might be more expensive to buy the ingredients up front, but you can portion out your meals throughout the week so you're not just eating one time but multiple times throughout the week. Therefore, it is more cost effective to cook your own food. Also, you got to be taking your vitamins and supplements. Sometimes what we eat doesn't have all the vitamins and nutrients that we need in our life. So be taking multivitamins. For guys, you got to be taking zinc. If you want to make your hair healthier, you need to be taking biotin. A lot of those vitamins we don't get from what we eat on a day-to-day basis. So you can't be neglecting that either. And then down the road, you start to wonder why you're having these health issues and why you're iron deficient or whatever it may be. Well, that's because you weren't eating the right foods and you weren't taking your vitamins and supplements. You can't just be eating Chick-fil-A and McDonald's all the time. You know what I mean? The other thing, obviously, is exercising. You got to be exercising, I want to say, at least 4 times a week. You got to be exercising 4 times a week at least so your body is active. And a lot of people say they don't have enough time to exercise. The reality is that all of us most likely do have time to exercise. We just don't make the time to exercise. Let me use this as an example. A lot of us say we don't have the time, but we somehow make the time to watch Netflix or scroll on TikTok for like 20, 30 minutes or watch YouTube or play video games for like an hour. There's definitely time if you can do one of those, then you definitely have time in your day-to-day life to be exercising. I know you can get lazy. I know it's not I know it might be hard, especially if you're not used to it, to build that habit, but do not neglect exercising in your life because you will pay for it in the future with your health. And also, when you exercise regularly, you get better sleep and you have more energy throughout the day. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have insomnia, I can't sleep." Well, maybe it's because you're not exercising. How is your body gonna rest if it might not be tired, you know? And for the people who say they don't have time, well, if you're gonna be watching, for example, Netflix, you can buy like a small treadmill and you can walk while you watch your show. Get a good 2 episodes in. That's what, 40 minutes, and that's already 20 minutes or 40 minutes of exercise that you were able to do, and you didn't even have to leave your house. Or you can do some jump rope for a little bit. 15 to 20 minute exercise is better than nothing. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you go to the gym for 2 hours, right? You can do so many things. You can even dance. You can even play some music and just dance for like 15, 20 minutes. If you have the time, obviously, to go out and walk or run or go to the gym, then that's great. But if you can make the time to do that, if you don't have time to be going out, maybe invest in some home equipment, do some free weight exercises. Like I said, be on your treadmill while you watch your show, while you watch videos on your phone. It can be done, but we just don't make the time for it. And we often sacrifice our health in favor of other stuff, like work or other hobbies, but we don't realize that we're doing ourselves a disservice because taking care of our health is the biggest form of self love. And regarding mental health, a lot of us ignore that too, sadly. A lot of us just spend all of our time on our phones, and we don't realize that what we're looking at on our phones affects your mental health. What are you looking at social media? What are you looking at on the news? All of that contributes to your mental health and your outlook and perspective on life. Sometimes we have gotten so addicted to our phones that we forget to socialize with other people, and we ignore what we're feeling. We ignore our mental health, that we're tired. We ignore our emotions. Maybe we experience something and we never talk about it. We just keep that inside, and that's not good because you can implode. Okay, and you carry that around, and that affects your interactions with other people in life. That's why, when I was working in customer service, you would have people come in miserable all the time because you realize that a lot of people are losing these social skills to just even talk to people in general, and they ignore their mental health because they're just on their phones all the time. And that's just one example. Like, there could be many reasons why you neglect your mental health, but I definitely recommend that you talk to somebody about your emotions, talk to somebody about what you're going through in your personal life, talk about your struggles. If you don't feel comfortable talking to someone about it, something that helps me out is to write about it, whether that be in a notebook or on your notes app. But you can't just keep it in, because the longer you hold it in, the more it weighs you down. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for myself. So please take care of yourself. That's a very important aspect of our life. And if you are able to, if you have the means, then seek to talk to a therapist. Some people have that mentality that, I only have to talk to a therapist if I'm feeling suicidal, or if I'm really, really emotionally scarred or messed up. But that's not true. You can go talk to a therapist. Sometimes even your health provider will cover it, because mental health is actually that important. Sometimes we don't feel comfortable enough to talk to the people that are in our lives, to open up to them, or maybe they won't understand how we're feeling, but we can talk to, a professional in that field and help us understand our mental and emotional health better. And ultimately, that mental health is going to do wonders for your outlook on life. So please don't neglect it. Your mental, your emotional, and physical well-being are just as important as your financial situation in your life. And speaking of financial situation, that brings me to pillar number 2, wealth. So this is the most obvious one. We need money to be able to live in this life and stay alive, buy food, buy ingredients, pay all of our bills, right? So obviously that one's pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to go over a few points. You should look at money as a means to achieve freedom. Depending on your perspective in life, you can either view money as like getting more money as like an evil thing, or two, you're hyper obsessed with getting more money and you ignore other stuff in your life. Both extremes are not where you want to be. But I do want to say, don't be afraid to look for another job that'll be a better fit for you, because work life balance is important. Yeah, you can be making a lot of money, but if you are working all the time, then your other areas of your life will hurt. Now, for a lot of us, maybe we are okay at the job where we are at. We are happy with it, but sometimes it might not be enough to make ends meet, or we struggle a little bit. So don't be afraid to start a side hustle, or sell some things on eBay on the side, or bake cookies. I don't know, do something. Um, don't be afraid to try it, because you never know, that extra money might help you. And if you pair that up, if you make a little bit extra income and you combine it with finding areas in your life to save, you might find yourself with an extra $500 a month for yourself. And we need to be mindful of things that we buy. A lot of times, maybe we buy things that we don't need. Maybe we order stuff on Amazon that we want and it's nice to have, but maybe we don't need it. Or maybe for people who do gaming, maybe we spend more money on games or skins that we don't necessarily need. But, obviously each person has a unique situation financially. So just be mindful of how you're spending the money. And if you're at a job that you're at right now that you're not happy in, that you're not comfortable in, then freshen up your resume and start applying to other jobs. My recommendation is that even though you have a job right now, you can still be applying to other jobs. And that's actually the best way to go about it, so that way, when you do land another job, you can make a smooth transition and you don't have to be a period of time where you're struggling with money. Pillar number 3, love. Probably the most complicated pillar of the 4. So love meaning family, friends, romantic relationships. So let's go over those, right? First, love with your family. In theory, should be the easiest, but that's not always the case. Families can have rough patches and, go through things that they don't agree with, have a lot of fights. But if there's one thing that I have learned with my personal family, is that even though you hit those rough patches and disagreements and you have those fights, right? At the end of the day, they're still going to stay in your life, because you're bound by blood, and they're going to love you no matter what. And I feel like sometimes we take that for granted. We are highly critical of our parents, our siblings, our aunties, our uncles, whoever is in your life that's part of your family. And that's normal, because we're flawed humans. That's just how things go. Just like how you and I are flawed, your family members are going to be flawed. But that is one of the most integral portions of your life, because you're bound by blood. And if you're not willing to fight for your own family, then I don't know what to tell you. For me, I know that people come and go in your life, but family are people that you want to keep in your life forever. I will always fight for my brother, for my sister, for my grandmother. I will fight for those people in my life, because they have been with me all my life, and I love them. It's out of love. We stay with family out of love. So Let us not take that for granted. And if we have rough patches with our family, we have to find a way to come to peace with one another and move forward. Next is love between friends. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in love with your friend, but I mean in the sense that you have to have close friendships, right? When we were kids, it was a lot easier because we would all just see each other at school and play, and that's all we had to worry about is just finding people to play with. You'd find somebody and ask him, "Hey, you want to play?" And that's how we made friends. It was that simple. If only it were that simple with adult friendships. But I feel like if you would go up to if you would go up to somebody at random and say, "Hey, you want to play with me?" They'd look at you so weird. Um, but obviously, with adult friendships, it is a lot harder because we each have our own lives and we each have our own responsibilities. So it can get a little frustrating when you plan something out and somebody cancels and then you don't see each other for another month or two or more. Maybe there's some people that you only see once a year. So it can be hard. It can be hard to, maintain and nurture those relationships, but I feel like it is important because those are the relationships that will help you create, fond memories in your life. And if you've had friendships that are older than 10 years, then, that's a blessing. And maybe that's something worth keeping around. So just something to think about. But it's interesting how like we make that shift from having people that we really connect with to we end up hanging out more often with like coworkers or people who have similar schedules just because it's convenient, right? We now have shifted as kids of having people that are really fun to play with, and now we hang out with people who have similar schedules as us. It's interesting, but I think it's still worth finding people that you really connect with through similar hobbies, and that way you have a different kind of love in your life, the love of friendship. Next, let's go over love with a romantic partner. Easily the most complicated one out of the types of love that you can find, but when done right, it's supposed to be the most fulfilling. Deep down, whether we all want to admit it or not, we all seek a lifelong partner. And what makes this type of love so hard is that unlike your family or you're born into that family and they automatically love you, finding a romantic partner and finding a romantic partner who loves you has to be earned, and that's why it's the most sought after, because it's one thing to be you know born into a family and have people love you for who you are simply because you're bound by blood. It's a whole other thing to find someone who you truly connect with outside of your family, and they can learn to love you for who you are as a person. In these types of relationships, the person chooses to love you and they place their trust in you. And that's what makes them so scary for a lot of people, for probably most of us, is because we risk getting hurt, we risk being vulnerable, and nobody likes to get hurt, right? So you go on a date, you go on the second date, you go on the third date, you talk with that person and you communicate what are your intentions, what is the direction of the future you want to go in, what do you envision yourself doing in the future, What do you want out of a lifelong partner? Do you want kids? Do you want to get married? It all comes down to communication. And a lot of people start dating and then they don't set boundaries, and then they get upset and they hold resentment to their partner because they didn't communicate what they were and were not okay with. But things like boundaries and kids and talking about the future and finances and other areas of your life is what really makes it so difficult to find the right person, because you have to not only find somebody who you feel a connection with, but you have to find somebody who has similar values as you do. If you don't have shared values, that's going to lead to a lot of arguments and fights, and that's usually when people break up. And it's important to have these discussions because things can get really messy when you're in love with that person, or maybe you already had a kid together, and that's when things start to get even more complicated. That's why communication is key. Ultimately, you don't want to rush love. You don't want to rush it. You want to take it slow, have it be a slow burn. The dating phase is there for a reason, is so that you learn about them as a person, so you understand what values they have. You have to ask yourself, is this something I'm willing to compromise on? You have to ask yourself, am I okay with them having 5 cats? I don't know. But ultimately, we all seek for a lifelong companion, whether we admit it or not. Because we do have our family who love us, but that's a different type of love. We might some people have their kids, they're single parents, and they love their kids to death, but those kids will grow up and they will most likely go on to have families of their own, and you will always feel a feeling of loneliness if you don't attempt to find a companion. And everybody might not be looking for the same thing. Some people might just want a companion to grow old with and not have kids. Other people might already have kids and not want more, and again just seek a companion not to be lonely. And there's there's other people who want to have kids and get married, and there's people who want to have kids and not get married, and then there's people who want to move out of the country or move to a different state, and then maybe their partner doesn't want to move to a different state, doesn't want to move to another country, or vice versa. And that's where things can get really complicated. But despite all the complications, we still look for it because deep down, we feel that it's worth it when it's done with the right person. Okay, so now that we established love and that, ultimately we don't want to be alone, we want to live life and share it with somebody, I want to go over the fourth and last, but definitely not least pillar, and that's happiness. I feel like you can't have true happiness without having the other 3 pillars in your life. But happiness revolves around self-esteem, a sense of purpose, and what you do with your daily life. I mentioned happiness revolves around your self-esteem as well, because if you don't feel good about yourself, then how do you expect to be happy? That's why the other 3 pillars are important. If you don't feel good about the job where you're at, you gotta start working in a field where you do feel happy about, or at the very least, you're not so stressed out. If you're not happy with your physical or mental well being, then you got to work on that. For example, when I was 18, I was super skinny, weighed 130 pounds, and I didn't like that. I didn't like being a twig. So I got myself into the gym. My journey is not complete, but right now I do weigh 180 pounds. So I went from 130 pounds to 180 pounds. That's a 50-pound difference. I have a little bit more meat on me now than I did. And that's, for some people, it might be the opposite. Maybe you want to lose a lot of weight, and that's because you want to be happy with your body. And that's all self-care. That's all things that are going to lead to your happiness. Don't talk bad about yourself, because then you're going to start to believe it. You know, talk good about yourself. Find things about yourself that you like. It might feel a little weird, but if you can't find the confidence to like yourself, then how is somebody gonna like you for you? You know what I mean? Happiness is also a state of mind. I heard a quote once. It says, if you want to experience happiness, stop looking for it. And I thought that was deep. Because we are told about the pursuit of happiness, meaning that we have to chase after it. But you don't have to chase anything to be happy. Happiness is a state of mind. There's plenty to be happy about right now. There's plenty to be happy about. You can be happy about being alive. You can be happy that you get to walk outside. You can be happy that you get to visit a family member. During the pandemic, a lot of times we couldn't even visit our friends and family, and we took that for granted. Whereas back then, I would get bored sometimes, just sitting around doing nothing with family. Now, I'm happy just being there with my family, just being around people that I care about. That makes me happy. When we were kids, we were simply happy just playing games and eating ice cream. What happened to us? Why did we start becoming so miserable when we can be happy just by enjoying the little things in our life? Yeah, I get that we grow up and we're adults, and there are other things on our mind, stress about bills, stress about life. But we can't let stress take over. We can't let our demons and our thoughts, our negative thoughts, take over. That's why your mental health is so important. That's why you can't truly be happy unless you take care of the other pillars as well. Because happiness is a state of mind. If you're wondering what your purpose in life is, know that it is you who gives your life purpose and meaning, and nobody else can tell you that. Life will start to have meaning and purpose once you give it meaning and purpose. Let that sink in for a while.